I got sent to a call center in Pakistan, and they basically told me to go F myself. So you're listening to Davis and the Jake Man, a monthly podcast hosted by two certified computer technicians. In episode 11 of the podcast, we'll discuss Davis's tech news for the month of July.
See anything that pops out?
Now, let's see here. Alright, so the first tech news for July was our American-themed one.
All you did was change the logo a bit.
It looked pretty good.
It does.
The red, white, and blue. The flag in the background.
Yeah.
It's classy. Okay, so out of that week's... I should really set this to Do Not Disturb mode.
Set everything to Do Not Disturb.
As an aside, I was trying to figure out a way to manually adjust the quiet hours in the Windows 10 notification center. There's no way to do it from the stock settings app. I needed to modify the registry. So just think about this. If someone's on Windows 10S, they don't have access to regedit, so they can't make those changes. Bad design.
You gotta go down to the registry. You gotta wait in line like everyone else.
I had a nightmare scenario where I needed to renew my permit. It was the only day I had off that week, so it had to be that day. But I was really hungover, like super hungover. Like it was bad. Like every 20 minutes I was running into the bathroom and puking. What's worse than having a hangover? What's worse than having to spend all morning in the RMV? Being hungover at the RMV was like one of the worst days of my life. The article you shared from Davis's Tech News, June 28th through July 4th, available on davisandthejakeman.com, was this article on Recode, where IBM is making a plea to Congress to not be concerned with AI. Because, IBM, one of their few semi-consumer-facing products in recent years has been this Watson artificial intelligence.
Right. I mean, the thing is, they're really afraid that if we push legislation too soon, we're going to stifle innovation. Because AI has already done some great things. It's helped make leaps and bounds in bio research, towards cures for diseases like cancer and things like that. And I mean, the thing is, obviously, the vast majority of people have a certain view towards AI because of movies like Blade Runner, Terminator, and other great sci-fi. There's just such a bad view.
Well, I mean, I think the way IBM is trying to spin it is that was solely fantasy. And I think the purpose of those films is not only to entertain the audience, but it serves as a warning. Like, even though they couldn't envision the specific way in which technology would become sentient, they knew it would happen one day. Like, there's been discussion for a long time about, what is it called? The convergence? Not the convergence.
The singularity?
Thank you. Like, this is like, we're moving in that direction. Where AI is benign in 2017, it's making these scientific leaps and bounds that you just outlined. But like, what happens when it can make rational decisions on its own? Like, a lot of people are convinced that the conclusion it will inevitably come to is that it doesn't need us. And as a tool designed by humans to service humans, that's not a good outcome. It's one of those things where you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like, once you allow AI to develop past a certain extent, it may become uncontrollable.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we can say that about many of our major innovations. I mean, there's things... You remember the Cold War and the nuclear bombs and things like that.
No, I don't, because we were both born in the 90s. So, no, I don't remember the Cold War.
You are aware of them.
I'm older than you, but by a year. Let's just keep things in perspective here, Davis.
You are aware of them.
I am aware of the Cold War. Yes.
Okay, so with humans, when it gets to that point, unless you're, some unnamed country in the Middle East, then we have the theory of mutual destruction. And, between humans and AI, that might not exist.
Right, there is no mutually assured destruction between Watson and the people of the United States.
Yeah, there might already be a backup on a satellite somewhere.
Of mankind or of Watson?
Watson.
Okay.
Who was named after mankind.
It's just one of those things where, I feel like IBM is saying that, we can't be sure if it's dangerous, so we should assume that it's not. Ordinary people are saying that we can't be sure if it's dangerous or not, so we should assume that it is. Like, we should hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Like, obviously, I would prefer it if IBM helped cure cancer versus inadvertently helps to destroy the world, but the possibility for both exists, and it needs to be acknowledged, and steps need to be taken to prepare for the worst possible outcome, which is software evolves beyond the need for mankind.
But on the bright side, no more updates.
Well, there are updates to AI constantly. You just can't see them. Like, it's constantly teaching itself, and, therein lies the danger. There's a claim by Twitter that they believe that they can predict riots faster than the police can.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Twitter is such Twitter is, a phenomenal platform. I don't have their most recent user count, but I do know it's crazy. Like, isn't it numbering close to billions now?
No, I thought it was 300 million or thereabouts. 300 million? It was just going
okay, it might be Facebook that had 1 million users.
Facebook just passed 2 billion users on Facebook. Twitter's kind of a joke in terms of its adoption rate because, like, a lot of people mention Facebook and Twitter in the same breath. Like, the two, for example, the two social media platforms baked into iOS at first were just Twitter and Facebook. Like, they were viewed by the world's most valuable company to be on even footing. But if you look at the profitability of Facebook versus Twitter, the install base of Facebook versus Twitter, the engagement rates of Facebook versus Twitter, Twitter gets crapped on by Facebook in every way. And the fact of the matter is, ordinary people don't use Twitter. Like, you and I have Twitter accounts, but we use them sparingly because most of our friends and colleagues aren't on Twitter, but everyone's on Facebook. It's one of those things where it doesn't matter which platform necessarily has the best features or is the most streamlined or looks the nicest. It's which is the one that people are on.
All right. So it comes from a report that people are using social media more often to report these types of things. Most people that I know would probably call 911 first, not tweet about it, but I guess as an afterthought.
I mean, it depends somewhat on where in the world we're talking about, because in a lot of first world countries, they do have a 911, or other countries have 611 or 999, depends what region you're in, but there's some number you call to get in touch with the authorities. A lot of places that isn't the case. The law enforcement infrastructure, if you will, isn't there. Like, they don't have an automated way to route all those calls to a central location. The police forces are non-existent in a lot of countries where Twitter is popular. Like, like the Middle East, the Arab Spring, that was in the news a couple of years back. Like, these people were forming a revolt on Twitter, and their needs weren't being met by the authorities. Like in the case of enforcement of laws, of protection of the citizenry, etc. So Twitter can kind of be a substitute in some sense, because it, instead of the government looking out for the people, it's the people looking out for each other. So I feel like there's a lot of controversy involved in Twitter, because I know there's been a lot of censorship on the platform. They've certainly they are far from an apolitical entity, and that leaves a sour taste in a lot of folks' mouths. But there is a lot of real potential in Twitter, in spite of those shortcomings. It's just they haven't been able to capitalize on that a lot in recent years. Like, the Arab Spring happened a couple of years back, and there really hasn't been that much of a substantive use for Twitter since then. Like, that was kind of the peak of Twitter as far as its role in greater society as a public good.
Well, anyway, the researchers did stress that it was only being used in an advisory capacity. They're still doing research on whether they can accurately predict riots. But I mean, it was stemming from, things like social incidents, things that people just notice and tweet about. Like, you're sitting on the bus, some homeless man pukes in it. You might tweet about that just because you're bored. Or just grossed out, or need some form of expression.
Sure, whereas I wouldn't obviously call the cops because a homeless man pukes in the bus.
Right.
So,
but there's all kinds of social occurrences like that could be used as hints towards something more. Like somebody tweets about a whole bunch of people walking down the street together or something. Maybe that's important information.
Sure. Yeah, they could identify a riot of violent nature before the authorities could, perhaps.
Right. And that's only going to work because we've become a culture of oversharing.
We certainly have.
Some of my friends I've unfriended because I was sick of seeing what they're eating every night.
But yeah, certain people you have to unfollow because they overshare. I agree wholeheartedly.
But Facebook could also do something similar. I'm sure they've got researchers thinking about it. But again, in advisory capacity, it's not going to replace the foot cops patrolling downtown unnamed town.
That's right.
It's information. At this point, we're just trying to see what we can do with AI. And, all this kind of deep learning stuff. Just spotting trends. Data.
I just feel like there's something so Orwellian about all this AI stuff, like deep learning.
Yeah.
Like, it's just creepy. Just, like most people, like, it's one of those things where it's just so off-putting.
It is. And the thing is, the big companies have spent years and years chipping away at our privacy. Do most people even read the permissions when they download something from the Play Store?
That's right. And if you agree to the iTunes, terms and conditions, they can turn you into the human centipede. Like, it's in there.
Yeah. Give them your firstborn child. Things like that.
Like, one of the biggest controversies when Windows 10 first came out was that you couldn't disable all the system-level Cortana functions. And it's just like, it's one of those things where a lot of people just don't, myself included, really don't see how much these AI assistants, which admittedly are only a sliver of the AI segment, really add value to one's life. Like, I don't need the Google Now assistant to tell me what the weather's going to be. I can just open up the weather app on my phone when I want to see that info. Like, they think there's so much utility in being given information before you ask for it. But maybe there's a reason I'm not asking for it.
Yeah.
All right, so how about this piece you shared in the Tech News from July 5th through 10th where Jawbone shut down and sold off its assets?
But yeah, Jawbone made fitness trackers and Bluetooth speakers.
And if only they could combine those products. That's what we all want, is a fitness tracker that we can, listen to our sick jams on.
Hey, you know what? That might be a good idea. But yeah, the company started a new venture called Jawbone Health Hub, which will work on medical software and hardware. So, other than that, the details are pretty scarce. We don't know whether they're going to be making more fitness trackers, whether they're going to be making heart monitors, whether they're going to be making surgical equipment. Who knows?
What I find kind of interesting is that in the Business Insider article you shared, it was valued at $3 billion, which seems insane to me. Like, no one's buying Jawbones. Why does anyone think it's worth anything? Which kind of, like, there's an overarching theme with a lot of these venture startups. Like, Snapchat comes to mind, for example. Like, it's a sexting app for teens. Like, why does everyone think it's such a valuable company? Like, they don't turn a profit. They don't do anything. Like, it's just a social network. It's going to come and go like MySpace. So it's just like, this is yet another example of a hip company being overvalued. Tech is cool, it's what's in, people think it's going to change the world, but social media or a fitness tracker, there's certain constraints into what they can do, and that's exactly why Jawbone is branching out from that.
Yeah.
Is because it turns out if you put all your eggs in one basket, sometimes they don't hatch. So the Apple Watch, and to a lesser extent, Fitbit kind of ate Jawbone's lunch.
Right.
And they didn't have a backup plan in the consumer space, so they're moving to the corporate space for that reason.
Right. Jawbone is valued, or was valued at the time of the article, very highly, which is surprising because they had actually stopped selling their Fitbits or their fitness trackers, sorry, not a generic term quite yet, back in September of 2016. Sold its remaining inventory to a third-party reseller at a reduced price. But yeah, I mean, they're trying to shift into clinical-grade wearable devices, things like blood pressure. Part of their valuation is actually due to their pending lawsuit with Fitbit.
All right, we'll be back after a short break. And we're back.
All right, so the lawsuit is over Jawbone. So let's see. Fitbit supposedly stole information by hiring workers from Jawbone. Typical corporate espionage case.
Oh, that's right. That's how you're actually a mole for secretwebsite.org, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm secretly a mole for Davis and the Fake Man.
Oh, that fake man.
Yeah, well, he doesn't pay me either, so...
Hey, I pay you in high fives.
You owe me 12 months of high fives.
Alright, well, here's a down payment. Alright. Something like the lawsuit you mentioned happened with Oculus. If I remember right.
The whole VR nonsense. And Oculus, I think, got a huge payout. I think.
I thought Oculus was the one who was the defendant. No, I might be wrong.
Let me double check.
Yeah.
Because it's been a while, and there's just too many lawsuits. But yeah, let's see. The company that sued, Zenimax Media, claimed that a former employee turned Oculus CTO took trade secrets with him. Alright, so Facebook is paying Zenimax $500 million, but no one's to blame.
That's right. So yeah, they settled, which means Oculus doesn't need to admit that they stole intellectual property from a competitor.
Yeah, this was back in February.
Facebook is so stupid rich. $500 million really isn't a lot to them.
Nah. Especially when they're trying to make VR their next platform for, Facebook.
If that's just, that one picture where they show Mark Zuckerberg looking at all those sheeple wearing the VR headsets, that is the Orwellian future.
Yep.
That is the worst possible future.
Yeah, and aren't they doing research into mind reading too?
So, one of the recurring themes in your tech news has been Verizon, and there's never good news with Verizon. It's that's why it's a shame that they're the ones with the best network in terms of their map of coverage.
Right.
Is that they're always up to bad things. And in your tech news from the 18th through the 24th, you shared an article from DSL Reports where it confirms it throttled Netflix's traffic, but claimed it was merely a test. Now, I'll start this off by sharing the official comment from Verizon, where they say that they're doing testing to optimize the performance of video applications on their network, and that the testing ought to be completed shortly, and customer video experience was supposedly not affected. For example, this one guy on that subreddit saying that he's used to his ordinary speeds are 60 down, and then during the Netflix throttling he was getting 9 down. So that's a big difference.
Yeah. That's the difference between, 480, 720, and then either 1080 to 4K.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. This guy's going from HD or 4K down to 240p. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And and he's paying top dollar to Verizon, so he should be getting top speeds.
Yeah.
Because Verizon is not cheap.
Yeah, because the thing is, when the carrier started offering unlimited data again, they started throttling. I've got unlimited data, but if I hit 4 gigs each month, I get throttled to all hell.
Yeah, you and I are both on T-Mobile, and T-Mobile's kind of been the pioneer and the second wave of unlimited plans. Because if you'll remember, right at that time, 2010, 2011, right when you and I were finishing high school, that's when that first trend started to end. People were trying to get grandfathered in. AT&T and Verizon weren't having it. You've seen this all over the place where Verizon tries to trick people into getting on some sort of new plan so that they can get them out of that grandfather clause. They don't want people getting truly unlimited data because people will use it as their only connection and then actually cost Verizon money, which is funny. It's like Verizon loves to turn a profit on all these people, and if like 0.1% of their users are costing them money, then they flip out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there are a few people who use much more data than everybody else. These are the people watching 4K content on their phone for God knows why.
But if they're paying for the unlimited data, then that's their right.
Right.
Like, if Verizon shouldn't have made these plans if they weren't willing to deal with the consequences. You can't... I mean, this is like a Darth Vader style, I've altered the plan, pray I don't alter it further type thing here. Verizon is all-powerful because they've got the best coverage. A lot of people only have one choice. Like we live in a big city, so we get coverage on Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. But a lot of people who live in the suburbs only have either AT&T and Verizon or just Verizon. Like, as the whole argument behind net neutrality is, less choice is always bad for consumers. So you got to protect the consumer because, as you mentioned, for-profit corporations will always do just that. They will seek to maximize profits. Unfortunately, sometimes that is at the expense of the quality of service of their customers.
So, in the most recent week of tech news, it was just announced that we are going to get a USB 3.2 spec. So, we're going to get double the data rates using the same cables.
Oh my god. See, I don't have AdBlock installed on... Anyway, back to what you were saying.
Alright, so we are getting the USB 3.2 spec. We're going to be using the same cables. So instead of 10 gigabits per second, we'll be getting 20. Because all these USB 3 standards aren't confusing enough.
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct, and when you shared this on Facebook, I left a comment to this effect, was that the Thunderbolt 3 standard is already twice as fast as USB 3.2, so it might be dead in the water. But the problem is this is an open standard, whereas the Thunderbolt 3 rights belong to Intel. So you got to pay Intel in order to use the Thunderbolt 3 standard, which is why you don't see it in all laptops. Like, a lot of laptops these days will have USB-C, but it'll be for power and USB 3.1. It won't support the Thunderbolt 3 standard. And a lot of people are like, why not? It's the same port. Why not just include that? But it's not just the case of the Thunderbolt 3 logic to add that wiring costs more, is that they have to pay a royalty to Intel. So I don't think USB 3.2 will be fast enough to use eGPUs, but hopefully 3.3 or 4.0 will match the Thunderbolt 3 speeds of the theoretical 40 gigabits per second.
Yeah, I mean, we've already gone above SATA drives. They only need like 6 gigabits a second. I mean, we can use a USB 3. We can use a USB 3 compliant hard drive as our main drive now. It's getting a bit out of hand. We've got USB 3 over USB A. We've got USB 3 over USB C. We've got USB 3.1, USB Thunderbolt, and now we're getting USB 3.2. Yeah, I mean, if you look at two cables side by side, are you going to be able to tell the difference? I mean, I think Thunderbolt has an actual Thunderbolt on the cable somewhere.
Right, but the connector type is still USB-C.
Exactly.
And then it's an issue, too, if some people confuse Lightning with USB-C because they're both reversible connectors. And then Thunderbolt and Lightning are both have an electricity theme to them. So that confuses folks.
At least we've gotten rid of Firewire.
Alright, so that was the podcast.
And Finn. Do we have an actual outro, or are you going to record it later?
I don't know. This is a monthly podcast accompanied by our website, davisandthejm.com, where we cover subjects of note in the IT industry. This podcast chiefly discusses my colleague Davis's weekly article called Tech News. Join us in the month of September, where we will discuss the tech news articles from the month of August. That's fine.
Good enough.